This week's sponsor is the new film, The Monkey. Based on Stephen King's iconic short story, The Monkey has been brought to the screen by Osgood Perkins, the writer-director of Longlegs, and horror master James Wan. Stephen King himself has described The Monkey as batshit insane and said you've never seen anything like it. And Bloody Disgusting calls it the most outrageous horror movie of the year. The Monkey opens in theaters everywhere on February 21st.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Have I Got News for You is back for another season. Roy Wood Jr., Amber Ruffin, and Michael Ian Black are finding the funny in the week's biggest stories. Have I Got News for You returns Saturday at 9 on CNN and stream next day on Max.
You have to control yourself!
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We're talking, I do have a perfectly good pussy. We're talking, both our children are blessings. And we're talking, vagina dentata. And I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace, and we're talking, a hero has to come and conquer them. That's what they say. The ancient Greeks and the Egyptians and early Christians and Jews and Polynesians and lots of Native Americans!
Wow, I am so surprised. I left you. I haven't jerked off since Easter, and you didn't take the bait.
I didn't take the bait because this is the line that makes me laugh the hardest in this movie every time I watch it.
It's so sad and hilarious.
It really is, everyone. We are discussing Mitchell Lichtenstein's Teeth, a movie about vagina dentata.
Yes, and what better film to program for Valentine's Day than a movie about sexual assault?
Oh my God, I know. It's so wild. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my history with this movie, Joe. Because because this is one of those ones that I've seen a lot, but I remember hearing about it when it did the Sundance premiere because, when you're reading Entertainment Weekly and you see movie about toothed vagina, you're like, what?
Yes. Oh, you have my interest. Hello.
So I was so excited, but then it never came out. And then I was in college in San Antonio before I moved to Austin for the rest of my college career. And I saw, they're doing a screening of Teeth at the Alamo Drafthouse in Austin this Tuesday night sometime. And I got 3 of my other gay friends and we on
of course you did.
Tuesday drove the 80 miles to Austin to go see Teeth.
Amazing. I love that story.
I love this movie. And while, because I hadn't seen it in a couple years, maybe more than a couple, but it didn't age as perfectly as I was hoping it would. But overall, I still really like this movie. I think there are a couple of, that's very 2007 isms in this movie.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm going to say even the visual look of this film, when I hit play and started watching it, I was like, oh yeah, this is how indie films all looked in the mid-2000s. Yes. Which is not to say it's not a knock against the film. It's just one of those, there were just certain things where you can immediately pinpoint, that is a place, that is a time. And this movie has that. But I agree with you. For the most part, this film still definitely works. And there's just a couple of pieces where you think, 2007, I gotcha.
Yeah, a little bit. So I'm excited to talk through that. But I mean, I guess, so Joe, what do you have a story with this movie? When did you first see it?
Gosh, when did I see it? I think this was during the heyday of my video rental days. Yeah, this was definitely a perplexed by the cover while looking through Blockbuster. And of course, folks, yes, will acknowledge that this very rapey movie comes courtesy of Dimension Extreme. So thanks, Harvey. Here's looking at you, you fucker.
I'll have a little bit more to add to that, a little bit more context to add to that. But yeah, I really think those Dimension, I feel like the the Weinsteins didn't even watch the movie. I think they saw Toothy Vagina and they were like, cool, Dimension Extremes label. There you go.
We can absolutely sell that. It's a chick who eats dicks with her vagina.
But that's the interesting thing about this movie, I think, is that you walk into it expecting it to be this kind of exploitative shock, and it's
absolutely
anything but that.
No, if anything, I was watching this and I was like, I wonder if Trace is actually still going to enjoy this film because it is giving coming of age, female puberty kind of films, right? Like this is May, this is Raw, this is Ginger Snaps, it's good for her, but also teenage fuck ups.
And I still do really like this movie. I wonder too if maybe this is a horror comedy. Like it's not a horror movie with comedic elements. Like this is a funny movie.
Agreed.
While also being very upsetting in certain moments. So
agreed.
I do wonder if maybe that's making it easier for me. Because I keep going back to Raw and Ginger Snaps. I'm like, why don't I love those movies like everyone else does?
I would almost argue that those are darker comedies, whereas this is it sounds weird to say that a movie about a poor girl who can't enjoy sex and who gets sexually assaulted at least 4 times in this fucking movie. Like, no, it's just got a bunch of laugh out loud laughs. I'm also curious to know whether our listeners, if they saw this film back in the day, if they feel that it has kind of lost some of its bite, or if you've never seen the film and you're watching it like for the first time, or you only just recently watched it in the last couple of years, does it still pack that punch?
Yeah, and I think it does, but I'm excited to dig into this. So why don't we go into some of this production? Because I was really curious as to how a movie with this premise got made. And unfortunately, there isn't really a lot of information about this movie because, Joe, sadly, this doesn't even have a Blu-ray, I don't think. Like, we are still working off of that Dimension Extremes DVD.
You bet your sweet ass we are.
Okay, so Teeth is writer-director Mitchell Lichtenstein's feature directorial debut. And I looked this up. He's only made 2 films since this. One is like an indie comedy with Parker Posey and Demi Moore called Happy Tears from 2009.
Yep.
And the other is a horror film with Jenna Malone and Janet McTeer called Angelica from 2015.
Yeah, I looked up the latter because I thought, okay, this movie, spoiler alert, folks, lots of queer people involved in the production of this film. And I couldn't figure out whether Lichtenstein himself identifies as queer.
I couldn't either. And so it's so funny because I did some pre-research for this when I screened this for my Weird Wednesday screenings last year at the Draft House. And I did the same thing then where I was like, I want it because it's, we have a presumably cisgender man writing and directing this movie about female bodily autonomy, sexual assault and things like that. And so I was like, well, surely he's gay, right? And I could not find out.
Cannot figure it out. This is just one of those things where, we have all this information at our hands, including misinformation on the internet these days, and yet sometimes you're just like, I need some, there's no candid pictures, there's no personal section of the Wikipedia, and so on. So, we can only speculate, which is a fool's errand. So I will just say, it's a curious fact in that regard. But to the extent that I looked up this Angelica movie to see, okay, is there something there that we could potentially cover in the future? And it's like, there's almost no information about that, except there is a trailer, which because you read the plot description and then those 2 lead actresses, and I was like, oh, it's about a couple with like a bad baby. And I thought it was Janet McTeer and Jenna Malone are the couple. And I got really excited. And then it turns out, no, there's just some dude. And I think Janet McTeer's the doctor. So,
Well, there you go. Well, so there's not a ton of juicy information about Teeth available, which I found a little shocking, again, given this subject matter. But what I was able to find is that Lichtenstein heard of the myth of the vagina dentata in college. And what struck him as odd about it, though, is that it was a male fear projected onto women that only says something about men and their attitudes towards women. It acted as a metaphor to quell male insecurity, illustrated by the fact that the male quote-unquote hero conquers the female quote-unquote monsters and her destructive sexual powers at the end of all these myths, that entire laundry list of civilizations that I read at the beginning.
I'm so scared of women and their sexual... Oh, wait. Is this just a prescient title? Okay, yes.
So he wanted to flip that narrative on its head with a girl who embraced her sexuality and conquered her male oppressors. A superhero origin story, if you will, which I do kind of view this as. I mean, it's a very off-kilter, superhero origin story, but that is what we're doing here.
Absolutely. And I have said Dimension Extreme DVD, and there's a making of featurette that's surprisingly long. Like, I think it's nearly 20 minutes. We've got interviews with most of the cast. But in that, we've actually got Lichtenstein talking about the genesis of the project. And he says superhero multiple times.
Which is interesting because it takes most of the movie's runtime to get to that part.
Yeah, I mean, hence the origin story. It's very, I got bitten by a spider, but it takes me the entire movie to put on the suit.
Yeah, a little bit. But then I want sequels. I want tooths.
Tooths.
But anyway, so he wanted teeth to locate the problem, not in Dawn's monstrous body, but in patriarchal culture and institutions that oppress women and restrict their freedoms, specifically their sexual and reproductive freedom. So, you know, whether he's gay or not, I love that this man is thinking about all these things after hearing about the myth of the vagina dentata.
Absolutely, yeah, because the easy way to do this movie would be to just recreate something like The Gorgon, which is the movie that Brad is watching on the TV when Dawn goes in to seduce him, which is just like Medusa, right? It's like you could make the movie where she's a horrible harpy bitch who goes around killing men and she's got to be put down. Right. And instead it's like, or Rape Revenge, the vagina dentata story.
Yes. It's interesting. The vibe I got from this is going to be kind of hard to explain, but like, you know, from what you think it's going to be based on the title, based on the premise to what it actually is, my comparison is kind of like Killer Condom, which may not be an apt comparison because it is like, you know, kind of a low budget, like schlocky trauma acquisition, but it's nowhere near as exploitative as you think it's going to be, much like this film.
And has a bit more heart than you might expect. Although you could argue that Dawn needs better friends and at least one, like, the biggest problem with Dawn is that she has no one in her life. Like, everyone that you think could help her ends up betraying her or just fucking off, except like her best friend is Mother the dog, and that is saying something.
Yeah. And well, it's one issue I have with this, you know, watching it, and this is just a logical thing where I was like, okay, but 2007, like, the internet exists. You can do all this research, and it is wild that you don't. But we're also forgetting the fact that this movie is set in Texas, so...
Well, I mean, we do have a sticker covering female genitalia in the sex ed curriculum.
Sure. I was surprised they even had a sex ed class, though. We didn't have a class, so...
I was surprised that they didn't just say, abstinence.
Yeah.
Done. Yeah. Class dismissed.
But, okay, so one thing that Lichtenstein knew from the outset was that he was never actually going to show the toothed vagina.
Thank God. Thank God.
And I think when I first heard about it, like, I was bummed like by that because I wanted to see a toothed vagina, but that's also because my, you know, 18-year-old self was like, yeah, toothy vagina, get him.
Yeah, you were hoping for the exploitation version of this movie.
Exactly. So to convey it without showing it, he and his team did a few things. They developed some pretty cringe-inducing Foley effects for the moments when it bites.
Squelches, yes.
Yeah. He tried to incorporate a lot of vaginal imagery, which was helped by the location of Hamilton Pool, which is a natural pool in Austin that they, you know, film all this shit at. It's like, you know, it's a cave with a toothed lip, so it's not what we would call subtle visual imagery.
And yet, I would say it could have been way more obvious.
Yeah, I think the biggest obvious one is there's a shot of a knot in a tree that looks very vaginal. And then, of course, you know, showing one of the actual teeth in the film, albeit detached from Dawn and embedded in a severed penis. But we also show a lot of severed penises in this movie, which...
Oh my God. There's your fantastic exploitation because, in that making of featurette, there is an interview with the prosthetics person. So, like, here's how we made all the dicks.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, we don't get any actual full frontal in this movie, but still, like, this feels pretty brazen, even for 2007.
Yeah, because it's not just one that we're showing. And often we show them in close-up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and they're all fake and severed, but still, like, that's a dick.
It's,
So, okay, yes, you know, Lichtenstein is aware of the fact, though, that he is a cisgender man, like, writing and directing this movie. And so I just wanted to pull up one quote from him.
Okay.
This is all mainly from an article with Lichtenstein post the Sundance screening, so it's just kind of from there. But what he says is, women are coming up and saying that they think it's really an empowering thing, and that's great, because that was my intention. But as a man, I'm not in a position to say whether I succeeded at that. So at least some people are saying that, and that's very heartwarming.
Right. Yeah, I definitely saw some kind of amalgamation of that on the Wikipedia page, or maybe it was in that featurette, but he's very reticent to say whether or not he feels he succeeded. He knows what he set out to do, and then he's leaving it up to the audience to decide whether he did it well.
And we'll have things to say about the audience reception, but before we get there, so as you can imagine, finding an actress willing to play this part of Dawn O'Keefe, which, of course, it's O'Keefe.
Georgia? Is that you?
Yeah, exactly. Either Georgia O'Keefe or just Queef.
Sir.
O'Queefe.
Georgia O'Keefe.
But no, so Jess Weixler was fresh out of Juilliard and actually showed up to audition for one of the smaller female roles. And he didn't say what it was, but I would think it was probably like her friend, her abstinence friend.
Right, yeah.
But Lichtenstein wanted her to read for the part, and she didn't want to. So basically, and this sounds creepy when you read it, but I don't think it actually came across that creepy in like actuality. But he followed her out to the parking lot and cornered her and basically just said, "Look, I really, really, really see you as Dawn," and like talked to her about what his view for the film was. So you can tell her it's not going to be this exploitation film. And she came around, and that's how she got the part.
Right. Okay. So he woman of the houred her, but not in the terrible way.
Yes. It just sounds really creepy when he's saying, "Oh yeah, I cornered her in the parking lot." I was like, okay, wait, phrasing.
Let's just put this out there. Men don't do that.
But okay, so Teeth, again, has certain elements of exploitation, mostly with the severed dicks, but it has a lot more on its mind, including that empowering message for women. And while I don't think it's perfect, I think it is successful, so I can at least give Lichtenstein that answer. But yeah, so Teeth was filmed on location in Austin, Texas during March and April of 2006, and had its world premiere at the 2007 Sundance Film Festival, where it screened in the dramatic competition, not the Midnighters competition, which I thought was very surprising.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder about the politics and, you know, who's getting in, who's dropping out at the last minute, whether they decide, okay, this is just a better fit elsewhere. But yeah, that is unusual.
Yeah. But I will say, though, it became the talk of the fest. It did get good reviews out of the festival, and Jess Weixler won a special dramatic jury prize for acting, which I fully support. I don't know why this girl didn't become more famous, or at least become this generation's Parker Posey.
I mean, you and I have actually had several conversations about this. We've contemplated programming this film probably since the beginning of the pod, and we were just kind of like waiting for a good opportunity, and then decided this year we were going to, you know, pull the trigger. But like, I got you to watch The Good Wife, of which she is like a supporting tertiary character for, I want to say, maybe one season. And when she popped up, you literally messaged me and was like, "Oh my God, Jess Weixler!" And we both just had to geek out because it's such a shame. She's such a great actress, and there's absolutely no reason why. It's the same as Angela Bettis, right? Where you just think, okay, you were in this oddly kooky movie, but also clearly have the chops, and then nobody else has taken the chance on you.
Well, and like even like looking at her filmography, I was like, okay, I recognize some of these names, but like even like the biggest movie she's been in recently is It Chapter 2, but she has like 2 minutes of screen time because she plays Bill's wife.
Yeah, it's nothing parts that don't, like, she's the fucking lead of this movie, and she kills it, and then, she's playing, you know, wife for 2 minutes.
Yeah, although you might have recently seen her on the Monsters, Lyle and Eric Menendez story. She is a lawyer for 3 episodes.
Yes, she is. She is Lyle Menendez's lawyer.
Ah, got it. Well, anyway, everyone, please give her more work. Everyone.
All of you filmmakers listening?
All of you filmmakers, please cast her. She's so funny. She honestly, without her, I mean, this movie is still, I think, well written, but her performance is wonderful.
Yeah, very balanced. You have to be very careful about how you play all of the different moods.
And she has a lot of things to go through. I mean, like, she runs the spectrum.
It's a good range.
Yeah. Now, a wide release for a movie about vagina dentata was probably never going to happen in 2008, and I think a big part of that is because of who bought it out of Sundance. So, Joe, you already said, the Weinstein Company, but here's the thing, because I could not figure this out. When I watch this, because I streamed this, I get a Lionsgate logo first. And
okay.
So what happened is Lionsgate and the Weinstein Company both bought distribution rights to Teeth. They bought them for $2.5 million, sharing worldwide rights, agreeing to split them 50-50 after all was said and done. The profits, I mean. The idea was to have Lionsgate take the lead on the domestic end and the home video side, while the Weinstein Company handled the foreign side, with both sides splitting the worldwide gross.
Okay.
Why go halvesies, though? So it turns out, by partnering with Lionsgate, which at the time was an indie film company, the Weinstein Company wouldn't have had to deal with the MPAA's signatory rules that would require the film to carry a rating. So, I know. I didn't know that. I was like, I don't think that's how that works.
No, we have never encountered that.
Yeah, but unless it's like, oh, if we do an indie, like it won't get a wide release. But basically, they didn't want to have to worry about getting an R rating. They were like, we're just going to release it as is. And so the Weinsteins planned to release the film in its current form, not cutting any of the profane material that likely would prompt an NC-17 rating. But here's the thing. It didn't get an NC-17 rating. It got an R rating on the first try, I think, the first try.
Okay.
And, it's for disturbing sequences involving sexuality and violence, language and some drug use. We didn't have sexual assault and rating reasons back then. And so I thought that the Weinsteins getting the foreign side of the deal was odd because, as you said, the American DVD was definitely one of those Dimension Extremes films that were so prevalent in the 2000s. And so I don't know what happened here. Like, I couldn't really find anything else. I was surprised I found this information with that much insight. But
yeah,
all I can think is maybe it got the R rating and then the Weinsteins were like, well, fuck. It's not NC-17. I don't know. And they didn't have material to use for an unrated cut.
Maybe, yeah. Because there's definitely like no variation cut on the disc that I watched. There's one movie. That's the only one that's on it.
So anyway, Teeth got a very limited theatrical release on January 18th, 2008, where it opened in 4 theaters.
Oh, come on.
Its widest release was 16 screens, which it expanded to, 2 weeks later during the weekend of January 25th. But needless to say, it didn't make a ton of money. The final domestic gross was just under $350,000.
Boo.
International gross is just under $2 million, so it makes $2.3 million, which is even falling short of how much money Lionsgate and the Weinstein spent to buy the thing in the first place.
Right, but we are talking about a time when it would have been all about video rentals. So I have to imagine that they did pretty brisk business, but it's also impossible to track.
Yeah, I mean, it's very rare that we find home video rental numbers to be like, oh yeah, it was really successful in home video, especially from this era. But I think, and this is me speculating. I'm going into like conspiracy theory territory here. But,
okay. Break out the red string. Here we go.
I think the theatrical release got botched because here's some white collar drama for you. So 6 months after the deal out of Sundance, Lionsgate closed a deal to purchase a minority ownership stake in the independent theatrical distribution company Roadside Attractions. And they,
oh yes, we know them.
They gave teeth to them, basically. So even though this was a Lionsgate film, they handed over all of the reins to Roadside Attractions.
Okay.
So Roadside Attractions distributed the film theatrically, but I know the home video release, again, was one of those Dimension Extreme titles, so the Weinsteins come in, but I don't know. But I feel like, I mean, again, we have to talk to someone at Lionsgate to figure out what their plan was with that, because I can only imagine for Lichtenstein and company, it's like, oh, cool, we got the Weinstein Company, which wasn't tainted publicly yet, and Lionsgate, with these two big companies going for us, and then Lionsgate passes the film off to their new acquisition.
Yeah, like, here, we're going to punt it over to you as a bit of a favor after we purchase you, and then they maybe botch it.
And that's kind of what I think happened. Unless, again, the plan was, all, as you said, to really capitalize on the home video market, which may have been the plan from the get-go.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, right? Because this is a title that would be challenging. Like, folks, if you go online and look, you'll see that there is a variety of very different looking movie posters for this. Like, one makes it kind of look like a romantic comedy. One makes it look like a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff, and there's like at least 2 other ones, and none of them really nail the tone or the vibe of this movie. So I kind of feel like they just really didn't know what to do with it. Oh, it went to Sundance, it got good reviews, people seem to like it. Yeah. How do we actually sell this?
And I don't think that any forethought was put into that.
No.
So, but luckily, reviews were mostly positive. We're looking at an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, but with an average score of 6.5 out of 10. So we're kind of towing that 3 to 3.5 out of 5 line.
Right. What do you give this?
I think I gave this a 4.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So Letterboxd users have given this a 2.8 out of 5 or a 5.6 out of 10.
Boo.
And I think maybe that disconnect there might have something to do with like all the things that have happened in the 18 years since Teeth was made. You know, I mean, this was pre-Me Too. I'd be, curious to know what this looks like in a post-Me Too world. Although, fun fact, we kind of know what that is, because that's not to say that Teeth doesn't have a legacy, because we got an off-Broadway musical of Teeth last year, 2024.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, do you know who did this?
I don't. All I know is that I was very sad because I was literally in New York when this opened, and I didn't realize it. I walked by the theater that was screening it. And also, if folks don't know, this is very much like an Evil Dead musical situation where you can get sprayed by blood if you sit in the right or wrong row.
Yes, exactly. So, okay, basically, music is done by Anna K. Jacobs, who I wasn't familiar with, but the lyrics were done by Michael R. Jackson. Now, Michael R. Jackson, in 2020, won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama for his 2020 musical A Strange Loop, which also won the Tony Award for Best Musical and Best Book of a Musical, both of which going to Jackson.
Okay.
I'd never heard of this musical, by the way, so I just wanted to say the poster advertises this musical as the Pulitzer Prize-winning big black and queer American musical, and it's like almost like a pseudo-autobiography of a young gay black man who's an usher for the Lion King on Broadway, and he grew up in a really religious family, but he wants to make it out, and it's kind of like the strange loop where he just goes, it's this metatextual thing where we're kind of in the world of theater, but then we're in the real. It sounds fascinating.
Okay, so do you know how he then gets involved in Teeth?
I really don't. I mean, as far as I can tell, he just decided to do Teeth as his follow-up to his Pulitzer Prize and Tony Award-winning musical.
Wild.
I will say, because, wanting to see what this movie looks like if it were made today. And so there are a couple of different changes. Like, we make Dawn's dad, we kind of cross him over with the pastor character, who we don't really see a lot of in this movie, but he is very abusive, specifically towards the stepbrother played by John Hensley in the movie.
Right.
So there's a lot of that going on. They term Brad, like they really hone in on the incel nature of Brad.
Yeah, of course.
And then, I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say, if you've seen Buffy season 7 and how that season handles the potentials, that's kind of what the musical does with women and their toothy vaginas.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so it's like a hereditary kind of trait.
I guess so, but well, more so like she's empowered, and so she empowers other women to grow their teeth out. But I will say, I thank you, because I saw that the soundtrack was released on digital and I could not find it. Little did I know, YouTube comes to save the day. So thank you for sending that to me earlier today, Joe. But this is one of the only musicals, I think, where I think the back half is way stronger musically than the first half.
Oh, that's a bummer, because I actually only listened to about the first 3 or 4 songs, and I thought, they're okay, but they're not really grabbing me.
That's what I thought as well, until I get to basically, like, once she bites off the first guy's dick, from then on, I think all the music gets much more fun, because they also do a lot of different genres as the show goes on.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But yeah, so I don't know. I would still love to see like a filmed version of this musical, but nevertheless, because it's probably not ever going to go to Broadway, listen to the soundtrack, everyone. There
we go. Yeah. Or if you're in New York, check it out. It's still playing as far as I know.
There you go. I love the poster too. It's just an apple with teeth in the core.
Yeah. Smart.
But okay, Joe, well, so you watched this Dimension Extremes DVD. So what was that experience like? How was that DVD?
Well, funny that you should say that, Trace, because if you like, I would enjoy playing a game with you.
Oh, before the movie? Okay, yes, let's do it, Joe.
Okay, so, full confession, I'm stealing this game in part from We Hate Movies, which does a VHS trailer game. So basically, I pop in the DVD and it's got the Force trailers where it's like, coming soon to DVD, on DVD. And I was like, oh, right, I remember hating these because especially when you buy a disc, you don't always want to have to watch that every fucking time you watch the movie.
Sure.
And yet here we are. So, okay, so here's how this is going to work. There's 3 rounds. So these are all the trailers that I saw before the movie began. So there's an easy round, there's a medium round, and then there's a hard round, which you will find impossible.
Okay.
So basically, I'm going to give you a clue. You tell me the movie. And we'll start with the easy one. So the first is a found footage entry in George A. Romero's Zombie series.
Diary of the Dead.
You got it. By the way, you're not allowed to use any kind of search. You can just go off the top of your head.
I promise.
I knew you'd get that one.
Hand on my heart, I'm not going to search for any of this stuff.
Okay. Okay, we'll step it up a notch. We'll make it a little bit harder. So, Medium, this is a new movie. So, this is a thriller starring Hayden Christensen and Jessica Alba involving a horrifying medical procedure.
It's awake.
I'll keep reading it for the people listening at home.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's about a horrifying medical procedure where the anesthesia doesn't take. So Hayden Christensen is awake and discovers it might be a conspiracy to murder him. But yes, it is awake. Well done.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now for the hard one.
Oh boy, okay.
So I have multiple things to help you because you truly will not get this.
Okay. Well, don't give them all to me in rapid fire. Do one.
Yeah,
let me try to
I will
guess.
do one at a time. Okay, so I will give you the general description and two of the actors. So this is a serial killer film starring Stellan Skarsgård and Melissa George.
What?
I know.
Okay. Nope, I don't know. You got to give me another clue.
Okay, so there's an alternate title because this is a European film. It was released in the US under a different title, but originally the title was W Delta Z, and the movie is sometimes compared to Saw or Seven.
Okay, this is because the reason I'm good at getting some of these is because Teeth would have come out around the same time when I was working at Blockbuster. So I saw all of these
movies.
And you had your big movies that had 20 cases at Blockbuster, but then you had your one-offs that were they're one case and that's it.
Yeah, I had literally never heard of this film. I thought it was made up.
Is there another clue?
There is one other clue, and you will love this. Okay, so we've got Stellan Skarsgård and Melissa George rounding out the cast in bit parts, Tom Hardy and Selma Blair.
What? Okay, I can I don't know what movie this is, but I can envision whatever the DVD cover would have been. I feel like it's all four of their faces with a grid pattern, and it's probably blue or something. Selma Blair?
Okay.
Wait. Can you rhyme the title? Because I don't know it. I will just give you that. But can you rhyme the title of it to see if it jogs my memory?
The Billing Dean.
The Killing Scene?
Close. It's called The Killing Gene.
Yeah, I have no idea what this is.
No. So weirdly enough, this is another Dimension Extreme release. And the poster for W Delta Z is different than the one that we might have gotten for The Killing Gene, which just kind of looks like a Dexter Morgan style profile.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. The Killing Gene, the Dimension Extremes, it looks like it's the same color palette as the Feast poster, where it's the orange stuff. So I think they're just the same artist, just repurposing all their designs.
Yeah, so the tagline is, a calculating killer coerces a detective to pay for his previous mistakes. So hypothetically, that's Stellan Skarsgård. Melissa George, I'm assuming, is his new young hot partner. I don't know if Tom Hardy is the killer. He's not one of the top billed people. So it's tricky, right? IMDb always puts
Who's
the wrong
now?
order. So.
Yeah. Well, I can say that his character name is not in the plot summary on Wikipedia, so that is wild. Also, I get it, because some of these DVDs have 15 minutes of trailers before them. Yeah. But sometimes I really like going to an older one. And by older, I mean from this particular era, because you will see trailers for things you have never heard. Obviously, in this case. Yeah, I think the weirdest thing about this is, this is a British film, so maybe that's part of the reason we didn't really hear about it. As you said, we might have only seen one copy on physical media buried somewhere in the back of the Blockbuster. But I was surprised because it, even the trailer itself, it looks a little bit generic. So when I saw people comparing it to Saw or Seven, I thought, all right, that fits the bill. We're in the right timeline, right? Yeah. But it apparently has decent reviews. It's I think at the bottom of the Wikipedia page, it says it's got something 71% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Well, everyone, let us know. If you've seen The Killing Gene or W Delta Z, God, let us know. The cast alone, I'm a little curious, Joe.
I know, right? I was I kind of want to check it out.
A little bit, yeah. Honestly, it's probably not terrible. It's just forgotten because it was probably botched by the Weinsteins and Lionsgate.
Yeah.
This week's sponsor is the new film, The Monkey. Based on Stephen King's iconic short story, The Monkey has been brought to the screen by Osgood Perkins, the writer-director of Longlegs, and horror master James Wan. Stephen King himself has described The Monkey as batshit insane and said you've never seen anything like it. And Bloody Disgusting calls it the most outrageous horror movie of the year. The Monkey opens in theaters everywhere on February 21st.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
To realize the future America needs, we understand what's needed from us. To face each threat head on. We've earned our place in the fight for our nation's future. We are Marines. We were made for this.
Well, now that we've watched the trailers on the DVD, let's talk about teeth.
All right, so we'll begin with one of the biggest conspiracies about this movie because, of course, we open on this sort of picturesque suburban neighborhood, but we can see smokestacks in the distance, and a lot of people want to read into this as, oh, that's the mutation, that's the adaptation that Dawn has. It's what prompted her to develop a vagina dentata.
Yes, and I've seen that. It's a thing, even Lichtenstein is very much like I'm not going to answer that question. Like, he doesn't really care.
Because it's not an interesting question. It's like, sure or no.
Yeah, I think for me, because we have Dawn's mother being having cancer, I think that's more there for that. And yes, you can read into it as like, oh yeah, Dawn mutated, whatever. But
sure.
I mean, we also get that whole classroom sequence with the rattlesnake speech that I'm like, well, that also kind of gives you your answer right there.
Exactly. It feels like they're both in there to say, well, you could pick one or the other or both. Like, that's not actually what the film is curious about. But if you are driven for answers, pick one of the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we begin when Dawn is actually a child. So we see her with her stepbrother, Brad, who in this version is played by Hunter Uvlog. She is played by Ava Ryan Plum, and they are just kids hanging out in the kiddie pool. Well, the parents, Kim and Bill, watch on, and immediately it becomes clear that Brad is a baby pervert because we don't see this, but we can infer. He shows his stepsister his dick, and then he sticks a finger inside of her, and that's why he gets a bloody, future-scarred finger.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very dangerous game of I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Like, I know because of who Brad becomes, like, we're supposed to infer, oh, he's a creep from the get-go.
Right.
This seemed relatively, like, childlike innocence to me, but, But I don't know. I mean, I guess I never played a game of show me mine if you show me yours, but I don't know.
Otherwise known as Doctor, yeah, like all the other stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, like it can be dangerous to ascribe sexuality to children. I feel like based on where the film goes, yes, that is what you're meant to take away from it.
Absolutely. And it's the thing is, too, because this does scar Brad in a way, and it really informs who he grows into as an adult. But I will say, Brad isn't a three-dimensional character in this movie for me. I think that was an issue. Not that I want more of Brad, God, but he's a very two-dimensional villain of sorts.
Yes, I would agree. And even you saying, oh, this is basically what informs who he becomes as an adult, like one not even overly traumatic incident defines his entire personality. So yeah, saying that he is a little thin in terms of characterization, I don't think you're wrong.
Well, because all we have to go off of is he cannot have sex with a vagina. He can only have anal sex because he's been traumatized. And he kind of knows why, but he doesn't know why, but he might know why, but he doesn't.
And he really wants to fuck his stepsister.
And he's an asshole. That's about it.
Yeah. Okay, so after we get this literally scarring incident, we go into the title credits, and of course we should note that the credit sequence is very reminiscent of like genetics. We've got cells that are sort of like mutating, eating one another, but I'm going to pull in my only reference for this entire episode, and it's just a quick little throwaway line just in reinforcing the superhero theme. So Carrie Edwards in his homeroom horror piece Teeth, it's sort of a superhero film, does acknowledge that these opening title credits look very similar to the opening of X-Men.
My mind went straight to Splice, which would have come out like a year after this.
Yes.
But
okay.
Yes, that does make sense.
Yeah. So we fade in on teenage Dawn, who is now played by Jess Weixler, and she is delivering an address about abstinence at a Christian group called The Promise. And this is everything we know and love.
It's so funny because watching this, I'm like, oh my God, this is so over the top. But it's actually a very authentic portrayal of what these kinds of groups are.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I kind of appreciate about this is that the kids themselves are revealed to be a little bit hypocritical because they're preaching abstinence and celibacy, and then they're indulging in their hormones and stuff.
Yeah.
But this doesn't present religion in a necessarily bad light. Like, as you said, in the stage adaptation, we get a bad pastor father.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we don't get something like that here. The closest we get is this guy who is maybe taking advantage of Jess's faith or her chastity, her purity, to sell the message. We don't know. Hey, are they making $20 off those red rings? Who knows? But it doesn't come off particularly bad.
Yeah, and I think, the Jonas Brothers, I think, were a thing around this time. But I remember that was a big ordeal around their whole thing. It was like, all the Jonas Brothers are wearing promise rings. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, we did the same thing with Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake, right? Where they weren't going to have sex until they got married. And then, of course, it came out that this was all a big sham. And unfortunately, as a society, especially in North America, we do have this idea around purity and chastity. And the problem is abstinence is just not a reliable form of birth control because, A, bodies are driven to explore and procreate, but also let's just get some fucking realness in the room and say, or we could talk about safe sex procedures.
Well, but it's also because the way that these characters talk about sex, it's like it's a drug addiction. And it's such a dangerous conflation of the two. And I'm sure when we go through the plot, we'll get some dialogue that really hones in on that. But yeah, it's just... It's really upsetting. And it's traumatizing in its own right. I mean, look at all the shame Dawn feels.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like one of the things that I do kind of appreciate about her journey throughout the course of the film is when she realizes I don't need to be ashamed of this. I need to be wary of how other people weaponize sex and sexuality.
Yes. Because we will see many different instances of it in this movie.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I do kind of like. I agree with you that Brad is not fully fleshed out, and you could argue nobody is except Dawn. It's really her film, and yet I like that we meet a variety of different types of guys, and not to suggest, all men, blah, 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 but also kind of all men, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the character that we will have the most interesting conversation about is Ryan.
Yes, I agree. But first up is Toby Cobb, who is played by queer actor Hale Appleman, who is definitely not Alex Wolff.
Oh my God. He is so cute in this movie, too.
He's very, very cute. And I literally spent the entire movie being like, wow, Alex Wolff before he got famous. And then, you look it up. Nope, that's completely different person. And then I realized, the reason he looks familiar to me is because he played Elliot on The Magicians.
Yeah, I've never seen that show, but I am familiar.
Yeah, and he gets to do some interesting things with sexuality in that show. And I mean, the couple of seasons I watched, I always found him to be the standout because Quentin wasn't it.
I don't know what that means, but I'm sure someone listening does.
He's the boring male protagonist who is also devastatingly hot. And they have a side bottle episode where they're actually queer and they adopt a child, but it's all kind of a dream potion thing where they've been put into a separate existence. Anyway, it's ended really nice. I never got there in the show, but
okay.
Yeah. Coming back. Okay, so Toby is enthralled with Dawn. He really likes the way that she talks. They have this meet cute after they are introduced by mutual friends, Gwen, who is played by Julia Guerra. who's played by Julia Garrow, and Phil, who is played by Adam Wagner.
Oh yeah, this is like love at first sight. Like it's practically like the swooning like rom-com music that plays once they lock eyes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, like we get a musical score that is just for their introduction.
I do want to highlight Robert Miller's score for this movie though, because much how you said earlier, like there's a lot of different like emotional layers and like tones to do in this movie. The music does a lot of that. Like we are doing goofy comedy to outright horror to sensitivity. Like it works really, really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I talked off the top about how the film has a very distinctive mid-2000s visual look. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily want people to associate that with cheapness. Like you can tell that they don't have a huge budget and it's a small cast and all that kind of stuff. But I actually think that the way that the film is shot and you're right, scored, it's emblematic of a much larger, more polished movie.
Yes. I mean, again, I think incorporating comedy into this subject matter is a very dicey move. And that personally, I don't get any ick factor from this movie. And I think there's another version where you would like immediately get that.
Yeah, the ick is coming from these shitty men, but it's not the production itself where you're like, oh, that's being mishandled.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Dawn bikes home. She's checking on her sick mother, Kim, who is played by Vivian Banesh, and she is being taken care of by her husband, Bill, who is played by another queer actor, Lenny Von Dolan.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with him.
Yeah, tragically he passed a couple years ago, but apparently I think he was a big stage person, but he ended up settling down with a queer partner and raising a child in like the last couple of years of his life.
Oh, well, hey, this might mean something to you, but he is most well known for playing the orchid-loving agoraphobe Harold Smith in Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe it wasn't stage. Maybe it was TV. Because I went through his filmography and was like, oh, I have seen him in a bunch of stuff.
Probably. But either way, I do like the dynamic between the parents here because we also, it's clear in this scene that they did not enforce Dawn's like journey for abstinence. Like they even said, like, hey, we're not complaining. Like we're happy we have one good kid in you, but like,
if anything, they give kind of hands-off parents, and that's why we have such different journeys for Dawn and Brad. Like Brad is into piercing and heavy metal and having super aggressive sex with his like, oh my God, Melanie, just get away from him.
Yeah.
And then there's Dawn, who's, she wears a unicorn sweatshirt at one point in this movie. And she has collages of, like, romantic stuff on her wall. Just very different kids.
I think Dawn is in a state of arrested development until she comes of age in this movie.
Yeah. You know what other movie this reminded me a little bit of? Saved with Mandy Moore.
Oh my God. If we could, I know we can't, but if we could ever cover, I love Saved.
I love that. You know what? I am filled with Christ's love.
Maybe we can make that a special Patreon bonus.
Would do in a fucking heartbeat. I love that movie.
I love Saved. So good. So good.
Okay. So, yes, we have not mentioned that Brad is also here. He is played by John Hensley, and his entire purpose in the household is to either antagonize Dawn or hit on her. So, he scares her coming out of the shower, and then later on he's shooting, I think, Nerf gun pellets at the wall or something.
It's like rubber darts out of a gun. Joe,
He's just a piece of shit.
Was it a blast from the past watching John Hensley again? Because
Nip Tuck.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, everyone, like, he was the kid on Nip Tuck, but, like, was it a general consensus or was it just my dad who kept saying, that guy looks like Michael Jackson?
It's because he has very dark hair and incredibly pale skin.
Yeah, this guy also kind of disappeared, like he did Hostel Part 3 after this, and then like a couple TV stints, but like he kind of has disappeared, and I don't know. But I mean, I think he's good in this role, but he's also just kind of playing a harsher version of the character he plays in Nip Tuck.
Yeah, if folks want to see a bit of his range or just see him not playing a bad person, I would softly recommend Witchblade. It's a one-season wonder, and it's an adaptation of a comic book, basically where a police detective gets a weapon that turns into like a magical kind of mythological thing. It's not great, but if you like genre television from a certain age, it's very also early 2000s.
It's so fun. I've never seen it, but I remember seeing commercials for it all the time on TNT.
Yancey Butler, baby. I devoured that show. It's got a great twist halfway through the first season that made me like, bring on season... Oh, it got canceled. Okay.
You know what? It got 2 seasons, but only 23 episodes.
Oh, maybe that was it. Maybe it's the end of the first season had the really good twist. And I was like, yeah.
But either way, did not know he was on that. That was pre-Nip Tuck even.
Yeah. Interesting show. Okay, so that's our family dynamic. And now let's talk about what happens when Dawn goes to school. Because guess what? Nobody likes her and everybody makes fun of her.
So this is my other second huge laugh of the movie. It's when so we have this shot that's like going in reverse, like facing Dawn as she's walking towards the school. And everyone's making fun of her. And Weixler just gives this face of just pure like chaos where she's like, she has no idea what she's like. It is the funniest facial expression I've ever seen.
Oh, that is wild. I have a completely different read on that. That is like, she's so overwhelmed. You know, she tries to hold her head up and then immediately she's just confronted with people yelling things at her and she looks so defeated and deflated. I see it very sad.
I think it is sad, but I think that the film is playing it for comedy.
I mean, the way people treat her definitely is,
right.
But we like the character, so it becomes tragic.
Yeah. I just, again, her facial expression.
I mean, Jess Weixler forever.
She contains multitudes.
Yeah. Okay, so in sex ed class, we've got teacher Mr. Griffith, who is played by Taylor Shepard, being very, very uncomfortable talking about female sexuality and yet strangely comfortable talking about male sexuality. Well, I will confess, in all of my sex ed classes, it was neither. Let's just get through this together so that we can go back to talking about sports and finances and other shit.
Yeah, we get the classic, well, why can't we see the vagina if we see the penis? Well, that's different, but he can't say why it's different.
Yeah, and then Dawn just kind of steps in it by loudly and a little righteously saying it's because girls have a natural modesty
that's built into their nature. And then Toby,
Dawn.
Everyone's making fun of her, and Toby's just like, they do, because Toby's trying to get his dick wet.
Well, yeah, because he loves her, because we still think that he's romantic and they're perfect for one another, Trace.
Well, question for you. Do you think Toby is being genuine about his desire to be abstinent?
I think that he's a softer version of Dawn. Like, she's on the I won't even watch a PG movie, and he's like, I think we could watch something a little harder. Like, I think he wants to explore things with her, but then, yeah, like, this is part of the film duping us, the audience, because when he turns on her in the cave, I think it's meant to be a big reveal. Oh no, he never actually wanted any of that.
And that's the thing. And I think that's how I've always viewed it. Is like, no, his end goal from the beginning was to fuck her.
To play the nice guy. So he could get in her pants.
Right. But then I'm also kind of like, well, but maybe the film's trying to say something where it's like, okay, well, when we get the big scene later when he dies, it's more so like his hormones took over and he lost control. But then I'm like, I don't really like that either.
I tried to do that reading up until the point of the sexual assault, but like he fully bashes her head. And then when she's unconscious, he takes advantage of her. So I was like, nope, there's no way to read this other than, oh, sorry, buddy, you're a fucking rapist.
100. Oh, no, absolutely. He is absolutely a rapist because he's fucking her unconscious body. But I guess it was more of the, and not that it would change anything, what his intent was from the beginning or not. I was just curious, like, oh, is this something that like kind of takes him over in that moment, or like was this a plan like what we'll get with Ryan later in the film?
Yeah, it definitely feels more in the moment. Like, I think he did have ambitions to wine, dine, date her. Like, he doesn't seem to be having a bad time when we see them together at the movies, when they go to the woods, but it also becomes very clear that he does want to have sex with her.
Well, and yeah, as you said in that line that you thought I was going to take where he hasn't even jacked off since Easter, it's almost like
it's entitlement.
Well, it's almost like the message too is, hey, maybe you should jack off and have sex, otherwise you might turn into a rapist.
Oh, see, I read it as, well, why don't you do the safe thing and masturbate like a normal fucking human being, and then maybe you won't rape people.
I mean, I'm telling you, I remember when I found out in church that masturbation was a sin, and I was gobsmacked. I was just like, how? How is that a sin?
I have so much atoning to do.
I literally, because I was like, I've already been masturbating for like 3 years. Like, oh my God. Again, shame.
Truly, yeah. It's how we keep people in control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. So, speaking of shame, speaking of control, let's introduce Brad's not girlfriend, because he doesn't do that label.
Oh, boy.
This is Melanie, played by Nicole Swan, and this is where we start to understand how fucked up Brad is from this childhood incident. So she looks at his scarred finger, and he suggests that Dawn bit him. So it's almost like he has repressed this traumatic incident.
Well, but, okay, for most of the film, that's how it comes across. But when he has a confrontation with Dawn, he's waiting. I think because he thinks he's crazy for knowing
like he
what
imagined
happened.
it.
Yes. And so he needs her to say it to be true. Like to know, oh, I'm not crazy. This actually did happen to me.
Right. I can see that for sure. So yes, other Brad facts. He won't have vaginal intercourse. He has this aggressive dog named Mother, and he's honestly verging on sadism in the way that he treats women, in the way that he treats Melanie specifically during sex and so on.
Yeah, it's something where, again, this is where I'm like, parents, what are you doing? Like, because I think that's maybe where the musical took a smarter turn by making the dad this abusive religious figure. And not saying I want a bigger presence of religion in this movie, but at least explain more of Brad's why he is this way. Whereas it seems like all we can go off in this film is, he was neglected by his parents.
I don't disagree, but I don't know that swinging it the whole other way and giving Brad this abusive backstory, because then it just seems like, oh, well, if you get abused, you might turn up to be a Brad. And I don't like that either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and truthfully, I mean, like, this is it's a 95-minute movie. Like, I don't want to be spending time
stuff.
Well, and I don't want to be, we're not unpacking Brad. Like, we're unpacking Dawn, and I don't want all these scenes with just Brad. But at the same time, I'm like, but he just is this asshole.
Yeah, you just have to accept it. Brad equals asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we do some double dating with Gwen and Phil, where we go out into the woods. We find this beautiful waterfall. It's where the kids go to,
they're like, oh, we're in a group. We'll police each other to make sure we don't try to fuck in this water.
Please. Gwen and Phil are all over each other at every opportunity.
Dude,
we saw them making out in the movie there.
Yes, 100 in that PG movie, because the PG-13 was going to have too much making out.
Well, I did like that Phil says, what about this one? And they all look at him and say, that's an R-rated movie. He's like, I know.
It's also like, aren't you like 17?
Truly, yeah. Good luck getting in there. Okay. We also learn at this point, when it's just Dawn and Toby, he confesses that he had a slip up. So he's, I guess, a born-again virgin.
Yeah.
So that is offering us some insight into, okay, so he's not as chaste or as serious about this purity stuff as he lets on.
Yeah, that reveal. He's a virgin in his eyes.
Yeah, capital H.
But that is a thing people do. Again, it's to help with their shame and guilt over giving in to temptation.
Sure. And here's the thing. If folks had a life that they aren't proud of, and then they find the church and they find faith and it helps them to become a better person or more of who they actually want to be, all the power to it. Here with Toby, it feels like a smokescreen.
100%.
Like, oh, yeah, I found this thing, and now I get to, like, hit reset, so I can't be punished for the things I did in my past. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, after this lovely date, Dawn returns home. She's briefly transfixed by the teeth of a monster in a 1950s creature feature on TV. I tried to figure out what movie this is, and I couldn't figure it out.
I guess I just assumed, and I could be totally wrong, I thought it was just them, that movie with the big ants.
It would make sense, because I definitely had like, okay, we're seeing mandibles, but it does look like ants. So I would believe it is, which probably lends credence to this belief of, okay, it's nuclear power that affected mutations, because that's the plot of them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, she gets transfixed by the teeth of the mandibles on these ants, and then she goes to bed so that she can masturbate. But of course, she's a good girl, so she is masturbating, thinking about marrying before fucking Toby.
Oh my God, I know. As soon as we cut, there are some actually really funny...
Oh yes, the transitions.
The transition, oh my God. And then the smash cuts to something. But yeah, as soon as we see her in a wedding dress, and she's fantasizing about him pulling the garter belt off of her leg.
Mm-hmm. They're just like, oh, is this what deeply pure, quote unquote, women like think? Oh my God, just the removal of that gets me so wet.
I mean, if that's your kink, more power to you. I just think it's very funny.
Yeah. It makes for an amusing image, and it tells us a lot about Dawn's priorities, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she does want to fuck. It's not she's against fucking. She just wants to lock it down. But unfortunately, then the teeth interfere in her thinking. So this is enough to upset her. I mean, the way this moves between the bedroom to then the class the next day suggests like she's so fucking traumatized by it. She's late for class. But this is, yes, the other example of evolutionary mutation that are beneficial to survival. And the teacher then, just in case you miss it, really hits it on the head by saying, this is about you, Dawn. And you missed it.
Because she's late. But also Gwen sitting there, like, when she's talking about evolution, like, yeah, right.
Texas. Or just the South. We don't know where this is set, do we?
No, I mean, it's filmed in Texas. It's filmed in Austin, Texas, so I'm assuming it's set there, too?
Yeah, but nobody's got the twang. No, it doesn't matter.
Austin isn't full of a lot of twang. I mean, do you hear twang from me often?
I mean, more so than me.
Well... Yes, obviously. But, like, we don't all sound like Steel Magnolias, you know?
I'm just saying, I have incorporated y'all into my vocabulary strictly from interactions with you over the last 6 years.
That makes me so happy. Please let it catch on in Canada.
Well, honestly, folks, if you're looking for gender-neutral options, it doesn't always have to be they, them. It can be y'all and folks.
So easy.
Love them.
I get in trouble with gender stuff because I talk faster than I think sometimes. And so y'all is a great neutral barrier.
Truly. Yep. And it works for everybody.
Yep.
So, okay. I do love this scene where we are in our respective locker rooms, but we're on the cell phone talking about how we had sexy, horny thoughts for each other.
And again, the way we're kind of like moving back and forth, I was like, okay, this is clever. This is fun.
So this is what I mean, right? Like you could have done a very traditional setup. You didn't have to make it this complicated or this visually interesting. So I applaud the fact that the film goes to these efforts.
Yes, I didn't mention this, but the listed budget for this film is $2 million, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That totally gels with what we're seeing. And yet again, you know, I think $2 million and I think, okay, so you shoot it in one person's loft with two people over the course of the weekend and then a lot of money for post-production.
Yeah. I always go to the Saw method here because I think Saw was what, $1 or $1.5 million. So, I mean, and that's just a bathroom.
Exactly. Yeah. And then a lot of funny elliptical editing to make it look like Donnie Wahlberg is driving. Yeah. Okay. So, because we've been having these sexy thoughts, though, it means we definitely, absolutely, under no circumstances, can see each other again. So that's not going to happen.
And I think this is when you kind of start to see the Toby taking advantage of Dawn's naivete, because I think that's something that you really see from Toby, and you can definitely get it with Ryan a bit. But this is where you start to see him working around to get his angle. You know, he says, oh yeah, I thought the same thing too, but he keeps saying something that's like, but maybe so
keep me in the back of your mind just in case anything changes.
It just makes me laugh though, because I'm also just kind of like, why are all these guys going for this girl? Like, why don't they go for a girl who does want to have sex?
Because she's off limits. They're chasing the chastity. Like even later on when Ryan does his twist reveal, oh, I made a bet about you, it's because she was unattainable. Guys wanted to fuck her because she can't be fucked.
Yeah, well, sucks
guys
for
are
them.
shit. Okay, so at home, Dawn reads about Medusa as she hears Brad and Melanie fighting, and she goes to check on him later on, and this is where we get a little bit more clarity about the nature of their relationship. So she genuinely doesn't seem to understand why there's a distance or why there's this animosity between them, and he's like, oh, you know, don't pretend like you don't know. And also, I'm going to try to fuck you later.
Well, like, okay. He says, like, you're saving yourself for me. And I'm like, I don't think that thought has ever crossed Dawn's mind.
No. She's too busy thinking about marrying Toby so she can fuck him.
Or wearing warning sex changes everything t-shirts to her dates.
Yes.
That's the thing, like for this first act of the movie, like this is Dawn's entire identity. Like she bases her entire identity around abstinence, and it is unhealthy.
Yeah. I do love, though, that she has those T-shirts. Like, the costume designer is part of the featurette, and she was like, oh, yeah, I had a blast making all of these different T-shirts, thinking about what would Dawn try to tell the world through her costumes. I should note that in this scene where she goes to talk to Brad, this is where she is wearing the unicorn sweatshirt.
Gotcha. Yes, yes. They all started to blend together for me because they all look like shirts that like a 5-year-old girl would wear.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Like Lisa Frank. Only with a purity message.
100. Oh my God, that's spot on.
Okay, so Dawn caves, quite literally, I guess, because she calls Toby to the woods. And okay, so you want to talk about like funny moments? Him flooring it to get to her as fast as possible because he's like, I'm gonna fucking get some.
Yeah, this again, smash cuts always work. Love it.
Yeah. So they end up getting changed. She has a swimsuit. He does not. He just goes in his boxers, and in the water they confess that they both imagine the other in their mind. So clearly the sexy thoughts continued on both sides. They begin to kiss, but when he touches the boob, she reiterates purity. It's all about purity. So she tries to drift away. She ends up under a sleeping bag in this cave, as you said, the vagina dentata cave. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't want him to come up, but he says he's freezing. So we have to huddle. Also, all I could think about was how dirty that sleeping bag would be.
Yes,
Gross.
like how many people have fucked in that thing? Also, like
yes.
This is maybe just a me thing, but if I'm in freezing water, the last thing I want to do is huddle up next to someone who's also cold from the water. Like, no.
But that's how it works, Trace. Haven't you watched Twilight? When you're cold, you're supposed to do skin-to-skin contact.
Not when I'm wet and cold. I don't want to be wet and cold.
Oh, this is your texture thing again, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not quite the stickiness, but it's similar. I just no. But also, you're cold. It's terrible. But yeah, he flips. Not. I was gonna say flip on a dime, but there is a moment where you see him. I guess it's when he knocks her out, and he thinks to himself, "Should I do this? Should I not do this? I'm gonna do it. Whatever."
Yeah, because I don't think he intended to harm her, but he is so aggravated because they're kissing and they think that they're having a good time, but then she says no, and he doesn't listen to her. He keeps going, and she says no repeatedly, and then he smashes her head.
And she even says at the end of some of those no's, she's like, I'm saying no. Like, she says that, but the problem, quote unquote, at the time is that he is constantly telling her to calm down and relax while she is saying this. So even though he can't hear what she's saying, he's not listening to any of it.
No. And he's already decided what's going to happen. He's here for sex. It doesn't matter that she's saying no. Like, she'll be fine once he sticks it in kind of deal. Which you just, like, what a rapist mentality.
It's again, this part is not funny. There's nothing funny about this part of the movie. And it is, it has that ick factor, but not because of the execution. It's just because of what it's doing.
Just Toby. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thankfully, none of the sexual assault sequences last for too long. I don't think that they were shot, like, I'm not going to say that they're shot in a rape revenge-y kind of fashion. No. Like, if a woman directed these, I do think we would be looking at them slightly differently. Yeah. All this to say, though, I don't think this is especially gratuitous. Fuck, we should have done a content warning off the top. Anyway, yeah, so he begins to rape her, and then all of a sudden, yes, thank you, we get a very Foley-rific squelchy sound, and then he is screaming.
His face screaming was, like, I think used on every single, like, promotional still for this movie. Every review had, like, his face, which I love that. We're not doing Dawn's face, we're doing this guy's face for all these promotional stills, but...
Yeah. So I did want to give a shout out to prosthetic effects supervisor Doug Field. So in the featurette, he does talk about how they constructed the dick prosthetics. So, you know, they had a specific way that they were going to do the blood, but they essentially imagined that when the dicks get bitten off, they would immediately go flaccid. So that's why you get like a bit of a gurgle of blood and then all of a sudden a rush of blood because now it's just like an open wound. Oh. But when we see all of the severed penises on the ground, they always look flaccid. And the specific creative design was to make them sad and pathetic, just like the men.
Well, I mean, I was going to say this till we get there, but I love the constant cutaways to the operating room. Yes. As they're like sewing these things back onto these men.
All of the amputated members, yes. Okay, so Dawn doesn't really understand what's happened, so she just kind of sits there for a little while, and then it's dark by the time she bikes home, and her parents ask if she wants a bite when she comes in, and she responds, I ate. And you know what? We didn't even say like, queen, yeah, slay, she ate, whatever. But that line in particular has aged well.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so because she is a survivor of sexual assault now, she has a mild freakout in the shower. She has the same dream of marrying Toby, but now we're hearing his screams instead. So this is obviously very upsetting, and she does tear down her poster collage in the room.
Oh yeah, she is unraveling.
Yeah, rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, she has just been sexually assaulted, and she has just murdered someone, albeit unintentionally, but murdered someone.
Yeah, question for you. Do you think that she knows that he's dead at this point? I always got the impression that she thought he might have been okay, because we will see people can survive this.
Yes, I got the... I don't... Because she goes back to check several times, and so I got the impression it's one of those things where it's like, that's not really something she can think about right now.
Right. Yeah. I can't process this, but when I see a Jeep that looks like his later, or when I see that his Jeep is still there, maybe he's okay. Maybe he'll pop up. Because she does ask Gwen and Phil, oh, have you spoken to Toby? You've talked to him today?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's more so like, I think she knows what she did, but she's hoping against all hope that it wasn't real.
Yeah. So her sort of gentle dissociation continues when she's picked up by Gwen and Phil the next day. She's very silent. They mistake this for nerves because she's giving another abstinence speech. But this one doesn't go super well. She struggles to speak, and I like this sequence because you could see it as a hallucination or a nightmare, or you could read it as, oh no, they're just so programmed, these kids, that they will repeat robotic Bible verses back to her.
Well, and that's the thing, is like, it feels so culty. And I think it's filmed that way too, to make it look like that.
Yeah, I said earlier I didn't think that the depiction of religion or faith was bad. I was thinking more of the early scenes, and this one is very, I guess because you're not entirely sure how much of this is being filtered through Dawn's, like, just very fucked up perspective right now, but this doesn't come off super great.
I don't think it's necessarily that religion is what's coming off as bad here. I think it's because you can have an abstinence group that's not even necessarily religious. Like, this one is religious, obviously, but I don't, I think religion is depicted fine. I mean, the thing is, I'm saying, it makes it look like a cult, and like that's kind of what it is. I guess he's not really doing anything that's like, oh, like this is a cult, like other than having these people, again, as you said, recite Bible verses back to her, which to some people that's just normal, but for me, that sounds culty.
Yeah, I think it's because what we're seeing is predominantly young kids, right? So they have hypothetically been put there by their parents to get the message, like quite literally the message. And that's the kind of thing where I think, well, as adults, we just have to be really mindful of how we shape young people. Like, you want them to just grow up and be like you. And I think that's a bit of a concern.
Yeah, you'll either get a Dawn or you'll get a Brad.
Well, there's that. Okay, so she needs to get out of there, so she accepts a ride from Ryan. So we had previously seen Ryan at the school when she first showed up, and people were making fun of her. And he is played by Ashley Springer, we should note.
He gives off Noah Segan.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. That's a great comparison.
But you should know, I don't know if he's gay, but he was in that Emmy Rossum, Zach Gilford bisexual movie Dare. He was the third in the relationship.
Okay, so I did look that up, and I fell down a rabbit hole where I read a bunch of reviews, and I started to watch the short and then ran out of time. But I was interested in that.
I've never seen the short, but the feature, I mean, I haven't seen it since 2009 when it came out, and it was very much like oh my god, like Emmy Rossum and Zach Gilford and this other guy having a threesome together, like, because you were getting, I liked it. I mean, I don't know how it's aged, but like in 2009, I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, IndieWire did a profile on it as like a midnight movie just a couple of years ago, and they said it, some of it doesn't quite hold up, but also there's a reason that it has stayed within the cultural consciousness.
Also, by the way, Anna Gasteyer, Sandra Bernhard, Alan Cumming, and Rooney Mara.
Yes. Snoozy Mara herself.
This actually would have premiered at Sundance the year after Teeth did.
Okay. So it was a good couple of years to be Ashley Springer, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Ryan is giving off new, different good guy vibes. Like, we saw that he wasn't great to Dawn at school. He very clearly was one of the people who was like, oh, maybe I can get a piece of that. But here, he does seem like, maybe I could just date you sometime.
Yes, I will say, the first time I watched Teeth, I was fully buying into Ryan's shit. And I was also like a 19-year-old boy.
Sure.
Watching it now, I'm like, oh my
Red
God,
flag.
there are so many red flags. There are so many red flags.
Yeah, like really his only interest in her is because he wants to deflower her.
100%. But I think he is really good at, maybe not for the audience, but at least for Dawn, for like making her feel comfortable, because he's the success. I mean, he's the one that gets to have sex with her without getting his dick bit off.
Initially, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, because even their first sex scene is kind of a rape scene because she's drugged.
She's drugged.
Yeah.
There are no good men in this movie apart from her father, Bill, who is an absent father.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. So Ryan does end up driving her home. He asks her out, and she kind of scoffs. I did love that moment. She's like, and then he drives off, and then he decides to circle back because he's like, why? What's wrong with me?
Why was it funny? And that's your incel behavior right there.
Right there, yeah. And of course, incel meets incel when Brad opens the door instead of Dawn, and we call him Pussy Boy, and then we punch him in the face. Sorry, Ryan is the one on the receiving end of insult and punch.
Yes. Brad is the abuser.
Yes, of course he is. Okay, so Dawn has gone back to the woods. This is where she sees Toby's Jeep. She does see a crab eating his dick. Okay. All very satisfying.
So on the nose, but I'm telling you, like, again, just cackle every time we smash cut to this crab walking over his severed dick.
Yeah, and this is the moment where she decides, okay, the purity, the chastity, the abstinence, it's not for me. So she goes to the top of the cliff and she takes off the red purity ring, drops it into the water.
Oh, I know. It's very symbolic.
Indeed it is, yeah. So she goes home, she hot water steams the sticker from the sex ed book off so that she can see what lady parts look like. And again, as you said, Dawn, the internet exists.
I'm so confused by this, but I will say too, this is when the score kicks in, and it's this like really like soft piano notes that feel fitting of the moment. You know, she's really discovering something new about herself here, and there's something innocent and childlike but curious about the score playing over this, and it's almost unlike any other piece of music in the film, because there's a lot of like, again, there's a lot of comedy beats in this movie.
Yeah, like this is a serious moment because, I mean, one of the things that I found interesting, there's a couple of moments in the film where it seems like Dawn is beginning to consider herself like as a female body.
Yeah.
In a way that she never has before. And part of me, like, I know that there's a running joke about like, oh, do all women look at their vaginas using a hand mirror and all these other things? But like, there comes a time where you realize, oh, Dawn has been so chaste and so pure, what she believes she needs to be, that she has never, like, she doesn't know what she looks like. She doesn't know what she likes even.
Well, and again, I one reason I really respect this movie is because I don't think Dawn is ever the butt of a joke. I mean, the characters do make fun of her, but I never feel like the film is asking us to laugh at Dawn. I mean, there are things I laugh at because it's just like, girl, like, you're 17, like, figure it out. But I never feel like the movie is instructing me to do that.
No. There's funny situations, but the character herself is not the subject of mockery by the filmmaker. Yeah. Okay. So we know the internet does exist because she does go online to web search. That is the name of the site. Web search.
Yep.
And we do get this dramatic sting when she is looking up vagina dentata. So this is where we get the myth, the legend. We get it in voiceover as she is driving around town on her bike. I did want to note there's a couple of deleted scenes. I'll talk about the substantial ones as we go. But one of the ones that we see is there's a lot more background stuff where you can see it in the finished film, but the deleted scenes make it more obvious that they're constantly surrounded by really sexualized imagery. So like when they go to the movie, you can see that there's actually ads in the mall, but we don't get to see a ton of it. But as she's biking, there's actually a giant billboard for an underwear company called Tom Can, and it's essentially a faux Calvin Klein, but it's like disembodied, like super hot bodies with just underwear on.
Oh, well, that's actually, I think, a missed opportunity, though, because I could see another, like a scene somewhere where it's like a supercut of all the sexual ads that are like in the mall with them, you know?
Yeah, like they're inundated with visual imagery that says you should be sexy, you should be thinking about other people, you should be having sex. Yeah. So she ends up going to see a gynecologist named Dr. Godfrey, who is played by Josh Pay, and this is very comedic. And it's very upsetting because he is going to sexually assault her. Yeah. And it's disgusting when he takes off the glove so that he can finger her manually.
This is basically, we're redoing the opening scene of The Hand That Rocks the Cradle in a horror comedy with character actor Josh Pius, which I love, by the way. The physical comedy, while he is abusing her, because that's what happens, her teeth clamp down on his finger and they won't let go. So they don't immediately sever his fingers. So while she is like flailing around on this table, she is dragging him with her. Yes.
Yeah. It to me, this could be its own short, proof of concept because it's got the comedy, it's got the sexual assault, horrifying, and then we've got the payoff of the fingers scattered on the floor. But yeah, like it's such a perfect encapsulation of the film.
100%. Also, fun fact, I didn't realize this. The actor that plays the dad/preacher and the gynecologist, I guess in different costumes, in the musical version of this is Stephen Pasquale, who is the main character in Alien vs. Predator Requiem.
Yes. I feel like I know him from a couple of other things, but yes.
Yeah. He's in 6 Feet Under. He was married to Laura Benanti for 6 years.
There we go. Okay. So the scene ends with him pointing a stubbed hand at her and just screaming, "Vagina dentata, vagina dentata, it's real."
Yeah, again, really funny because he like trails off. Because you and I don't really have a comparison for what it's like to be in this kind of a medical environment, I guess, until we start getting our prostates checked.
Right.
But I think from the get-go, he's pretty creepy with her.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I really liked about the scene is how he default assumes that she is there because she wants to become sexually active. And she's just like, no, that's actually not. And it's so emblematic of what men think of women when they're talking about just like their reproductive health.
Yes. It's very condescending. And again, taking advantage of her naivete.
Yeah, because she's clearly never had a gynecological exam, so she doesn't know what is normal and what isn't, which is why he is able to assault her. And also because he's abusing his power as like a medical practitioner.
Yeah, so this is sexual assault number 2?
2.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like, oh, let's keep that timer or that dinger going.
It's like that South Park episode when they count all the times they say shit in the corner. So we're just going to keep that for this movie, but with the sexual assault.
Only with sexual assault. Grim.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So we see Dawn back on her bike. We don't exactly know where she's going, but she does believe that she's about to be pulled over by the police. Then she mistakes a Jeep, thinking that it might be Toby driving it. So she's on edge. Yeah. She's spiraling a little bit. And then she gets to the woods, and this is where she sees that the police scuba team is pulling Toby's body out of the water.
Yeah, so if she didn't know he was dead before, she definitely knows now.
Yeah, so there is a deleted scene that I think would have actually helped in terms of, it's not a great scene by itself, but it would make more sense in helping to explain why Dawn is so isolated. I think it would have been here, but I don't know exactly where it would have been. Because I haven't read the screenplay, but there's a moment where she goes to school and she talks to Phil and Gwen, and they actively blame her because everyone believes that Toby died by suicide. And they think that he did it because she dumped him. So, like, they're very mean to her. And they essentially say, well, he was our friend. And as though to suggest we're better friends with him than we were with you. Which is, and I think it's an important scene because if not, you don't understand why Dawn is so isolated and why she doesn't try to confide in them. But it is like, it's character assassination for these two. They're pieces of shit after you see the scene.
God, yeah. Because that is one thing. I mean, you know, we talked about how isolated Dawn is. Like, I am surprised she doesn't have, like, the one girlfriend, which maybe that is Gwen, but
it's supposed to be Gwen.
She's not getting it because she's in her own relationship. But again, we don't really hone in on
we don't
that
get
much.
that.
Yeah.
We have to infer it. Yeah. Okay, so she goes home. I found this incredibly upsetting as like an adult person with ailing parents. So she goes home and Kim is just unconscious on the floor. Her mom is unconscious. Yeah. And we see that Brad is fucking Melanie with the door open.
Yep. And they are not even paying attention to it. Which I fully believe, though. Because they did see her. Melanie all but confirms that later, right?
She does at the hospital. We'll later learn that Brad just told her to ignore him.
It happens all the time, yeah.
Well, and I read this as, and I think this is ultimately the thing that sets Dawn over the edge and why she ultimately decides to take revenge on Brad is because he could have helped. And because he didn't, that's why Kim ultimately dies.
100%. But then, so then we get another transition. So we cut away from this to a shot of Dawn sleeping. And we just, again, what was the word you used? The portmanteau? Foley-rific?
Yeah, Foley squelch, baby.
And we just hear these sounds of chewing and crunching, which wake her up, but she's just in the hospital with her dad's, or her stepdad, so yeah.
This was a gag that I found funny, but I think ultimately it doesn't serve the film because she goes from the house to waking up in the hospital to her dad sending her back home, and I was like, so that was a scene for nothing except that Foley joke.
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, it's effective to get us, because obviously this is consuming her mind right now, but yeah, it's not like, it's a 2-second bit.
It's not essential.
Yeah.
So she tries to go home, but she hears Brad and Melanie fighting, so she ends up going to Ryan's garage because he's such a bachelor. He lives in the garage.
And she is definitely lost it by this point.
Yeah, so he's consoling her, which as an audience, I'm sure every female identifying member of the audience just looks at this and says like, red flag number 85. Don't trust this dude.
I'm telling you, I'm only like honing in on this because I just remember being so shocked when it was like when the twist comes out with him when he's fucking her, and I was just like, "What? No! Like, come on! He was so nice to her." But again, 19-year-old Trace wasn't
very different.
It wasn't linking the pill stuff.
Yes,
which as an adult, well, I guess 19 I was an adult, but as a 35-year-old, I definitely picked up on that and was like, "Oh, no."
Yeah, it's because we also don't spend a ton of time, like we don't belabor the point, like we don't zoom in on the pill, we don't see his open hand giving it to her kind of deal. So yeah, he draws her a bath, he gives her this mystery pill, says, oh, this is something my mom takes to calm down.
It's probably like a Vicodin or something, but she does reach for it immediately.
Yeah, because she doesn't want to feel things. Like, she's traumatized. So he also then gives her champagne, but then spills his champagne on her, won't give her her clothes when she asks for them. Oh, that grossed me out.
But then we move into him pleasuring her.
Well, yes, but as we said earlier, we're going to make it very, very, very clear to all the people at the back of the room, this is still sexual assault because she cannot consent to this because she is drugged.
Correct.
So even though she seems to be having an okay time, this is still rape.
I think that's too what my younger self was thinking, where I was like, oh, because he's kind of instrumental in her learning to accept herself and her teeth.
Right. Yeah.
Albeit through very gross ways, but that is what happens here.
Yeah, because they do ultimately end up having sex, and it seems like it goes okay for both of them. Although we should note that she does try to warn him in her drugged state about the teeth, and he kind of laughs it off like, oh yeah, the teeth, got it.
Well, because, we have this myth about how, in all these cult civilizations, like they say, oh, this mythical male hero has come and conquered the female monster. And so when she druggily says, wait, like they're going to get you, and he's like, oh, Oh, no, I'm conquering them. I'm the hero.
I'm the hero.
Again, big laughs all around.
Yeah. So we should note that we're also doing some cross-cutting going on here. So we've got the bit with the medical examiner explaining the tooth extracted from Toby's dick stump. And he says that this is human, but we do identify that the nature of the tooth is kind of a cross between a shark and an eel. Yeah. And then we go back to Dawn and Ryan. They're post-sex, and she's marveling that he's still alive. Of course, he's none the wiser.
I also do love his very high-pitched screams when he comes.
Yes, well, he's fluent in high-pitched screams, as we will discover in a moment. But before we get there, we also briefly see Dr. Godfrey going into surgery. And I love this thing where they say, so you're sure you don't want to tell us how this happened to you? And you're like, nope, he can't, because he would have to admit that he was raping a patient.
Well, that is the truth. I feel like for this character, he is just going to say, oh, they'll think he's insane because he's going to talk about vagina dentata when it should be what you're talking about.
Yeah. I should note that there are actually two deleted scenes, very brief ones, of both Dr. Godfrey as well as Ryan after their respective surgeries when Dawn is walking through the hospital, and they both kind of look either like terrified, or we just see that they have both come out of their respective surgeries okay.
Interesting. Yeah, because I guess that's true. Like, we only kill one person in this movie. Well, I guess two if you cut the mom, but like Dawn is only killing one person in this movie.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's just Toby.
Yeah. Oh, see, I mean, I guess we don't need it because the man at the point, but I would have liked to have seen that. I guess I can on the DVD.
Yeah, there you go. So we cut back to Dawn examining her naked body in the bathroom after sex with Ryan, and then she comes out. He ends up enticing her into a second round, and as they're fucking, this is when it comes out that he made a stupid bet. Yes, that's my She's All That reference.
Okay, wait, but it comes out because while they are fucking, he takes a phone call.
Yes. Yeah. Mid-fuck, take a phone call? Teenage boys.
I'm also like, I'm not a fan. It works, but I'm not a fan of the whole like, oh, well, your mouth is saying that, but your sweet pussy is saying something different. I'm like, ugh!
It's so vulgar and gross. And it's one of those things where it feels like it's very deliberately in here, just in case you missed all the other red flags or all the other clues about how shitty Ryan is. Yeah. It's not just, oh, he deflowered her as part of a bet because he wanted to prove he could, but also he's just gross.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
This is disgusting.
But here's the thing. The moment is so satisfying because she realizes how awful he is, and you can see her almost flex. Like, we're not seeing anything. I think we see Jess Weixler's boobs when she's looking at herself in the mirror, but like in this moment they're having sex, we're not really seeing any nudity, but we see this look of determination on her face, like she's, doing a kegel or something. Yeah. And we hear the squelching Foley.
Yep.
And his scream.
Oh, it's so good. They had to have practiced some of that shit, right?
Oh God, yeah. Because this is part of the performance.
But I love that shift in Wexler's face when she's just like, oh, and like, it's so. And I think this is when the movie does become a good for her movie.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Because you could say that about the Toby scene, but she also did that unwillingly, whereas this is like, she has control over this now. This is her choice. And it's like, fuck yeah, girl, get it.
Exactly. Yeah, like this is her saying, I think I can actually do this when I want to, and not just as a reflex when I'm being assaulted. This is, oh, I thought I was having a good time. I thought I was enjoying my sexuality. This person is a piece of shit, and I don't have to take it.
Yeah. And I love the added detail. So she leaves. We do get to see him try to put it back on his stump, and the severed dick still has a condom on it, and his stump is just like spewing blood. And he calls his mom on the intercom.
Yes. It's so pathetic. Yeah. And we will see him one last time when he's about to go into surgery, and the attendants mock the size of his penis.
Hardly seems worth it. But I actually, so that I do think is, I know like making fun of like small dicks is like not really a thing we like to
It's
do
not
now,
great, but also it feels appropriate here.
In this case, it feels appropriate. But I honestly think the bigger laugh is, so we cut to this operating table, and then the first thing we hear is the doctor just going, well, when it rains, it pours.
Like, man, we've had to do a lot of these amputation surgeries recently.
Hardly seems worth it. And then
it's just very funny.
I love it.
Okay, so this is comedy mixed with pathos because Kim is dead, and we just see Dawn crying over her mom's body, and it's very sad.
And that's the thing. I think for a movie that is as funny as this movie can be sometimes, it still lands these moments. And and that's saying something, too, when the mom is a character we've met in maybe 2 scenes.
Yeah, not a character, but you feel it because Dawn feels it.
Yes, and you're right. That shot of her just like laying over her body in this brightly daylight lit like hospital room.
Just garish.
God.
Yeah. So Bill tries to take things out on Brad. He wants him to leave. He's done with his shit. Clearly, he blames him for what has happened to Kim. And we get this physical altercation, and then Mother gets out of her cage, and she ends up biting Bill in the neck. And it's clear she could have probably killed him if Brad hadn't called her back.
I fully believe that. Believe that, yeah.
This is then when we get the reveal from Melanie when they bring Bill to the hospital. And I like Melanie. I wish we actually had a bit more of this character. I appreciate it's not that movie. This isn't about her. But I'm just like, man, you are a flip of Dawn, where you are also the victim of sexualized violence at the hands of shitty men in this movie.
Absolutely, yeah. There's another version of this movie where they team up, and actually, I didn't look at.
Hey.
I don't know if she is a character in the musical or not. They might have excised her.
Yeah, you probably would because, well. Or she just doesn't really get much to do, right?
Well, it's because, though, the girls in Dawn's, like, the Promise Ring group, they're kind of like the Greek chorus of the film. So they have a bigger part in the play.
You know what? Then, yeah, she's probably been condensed into one of them.
Oh, also, the other big change they do is Ryan he's basically fucking her to prove that he's not gay. So instead of taking a phone call during the sex scene, it's revealing that he's live streaming it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a quote unquote nice contemporary update.
Yeah. I mean, again, you can read the whole plot on Wikipedia, y'all.
All right, there we go. Okay, so at this point, yeah, we're in full rape revenge mode. I compared this sequence to Showgirls because Dawn puts on her makeup, she puts on the dress that she knows is going to get her in the room.
Yeah.
This is full Nomi Malone going to see what's-his-face.
Does she paint her nipples pink with her lipstick, too?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe.
You know what? Deleted scene. Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
So she goes in to meet Brad in her best virgin getup. She turns off 1964's The Gorgon, which is apparently, I think, a Hammer classic. And then she climbs on top of him and he says, "This is a weird day." And she says, "It'll get more weird."
And it's so funny because this is a case, too, where the roles are reversed. And she is exhibiting so many red flags as to why he should not be doing this with her.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, what has changed, Brad? Why do you think she's suddenly willing to have sex with you, you fucking idiot?
And her entire demeanor has changed. Like, she is dead serious.
She's aggressive.
Yes.
She's in control, yeah. One of the things I really enjoy is when because he's a stupid fucking man, he accepts this. He willingly goes along with it because this is everything he's been wanting and dreaming of. He knew this moment would come. So he tries to have sex with her the way he has been having sex with Melanie, and she refuses, and she gets on top of him.
Yeah, she's like, nope, and he is not used to that because he looks out of his element in these moments. But I guess it's also because whether he knows it or not, he is terrified of her vagina.
Yes. Yeah, I do really love the one shot where we see him rubbing the scarred finger across her mouth. Like, he's doing it in I'm going to stick my finger in your mouth, it's hot. But what it does to us, the audience, is it shows us both the scarred finger as well as one of her rows of teeth.
Yes.
I was just like, visually, great. Love it.
Well, and it's so funny because I think by this point, too, you're like, okay, we've already seen 2 dicks got bitten off. Like, and the last one was pretty graphic. So, like, what can we do?
How are we going to up the ante?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. How are we going to? And boy, oh boy, do they.
Yeah, so this whole encounter is happening as Mother is trying to get out of this crate. And we know what Mother can do because we had that earlier scene. But nope, Brad gets squelched. And this time it's even more satisfying because Dawn somehow manages to keep the dick inside of her until she stands, and then she just drops it like refuse on the floor.
And we can see that he's got a Prince Albert, baby.
He does indeed. And that's important to note because Mother gets out of the crate, and we think for the hottest of moments that Dawn is going to get attacked by this dog because that's what Brad is commanding it to do. And instead, it just gobbles that wiener down so that only the Prince Albert is visible.
I think it has the whole thing in its mouth, but then, it like spits out the Prince Albert. But this,
you can't chew it. You can't swallow it. So,
I mean, you could swallow it. I'm not a quitter, Joe.
Okay, well, you get that foreskin, girl.
But no, this is, and again, so cathartic watching just the
Yes.
look of despair on John Hensley's face as he because I think he's like...
He's sobbing. He's crying.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
no.
he's like, no!
It's so pathetic. And you're like, I guess we don't consider this one a sexual assault because Dawn has chosen to engage, but I do love the fact that she does it knowing her power, owning her agency, being in full control of the entire sexual situation.
Yeah.
And this shitty dude who we have just hated the entire movie gets his, and it's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, to my knowledge, I'm sure it's maybe not the only example, but like it's one of the only examples I've seen of a rape revenge film where the revenge is via sex. I know, I'm already second guessing myself. Like, wait, surely we've had instances where sexual assault survivors like have used the promise of more sex to get back at their abusers, but nothing's jumping to my mind right now.
Can I direct you towards Femme?
Oh, well.
Not quite the same thing because like sex isn't used as the weapon,
but the power dynamics.
Exactly.
Yeah. For sure.
But folks, hit us up with other examples because I'm with you. I'm blanking in the moment, and I'm sure there's probably 50 that are coming our way.
Yeah, or at least but the method of revenge is also like sex. You know, but this is so incredibly cathartic.
Indeed, yeah. And this is the last that we will see of Brad because we just leave because Dawn's work here is done. She has nothing left. I feel bad for her father, but...
Yeah. Oh, that actually is really shitty. Like, but I guess it's her stepdad, though, not her father.
That is true. Yeah. Okay, so Dawn bikes away. Once again, we see the smokestacks spewing their pollution into the air. She eventually has to hitch a ride because she gets a flat tire. So we get this lecherous old man who is played by Doyle Carter. And when we reach a destination, he, of course, refuses to let her out. So we do unlock within the car. And another great facial expression from Weixler to end this film as she turns to us. It's almost a fourth wall break. So that she can smile because she's like, well, I guess I got to do it again.
Which, but the tone you just said was like, oh, I guess this again. But no, this is more like, oh no, she now knows her power.
Yes.
And this is what she's doing with the rest of her life.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's a Thelma and Louise version where she meets up with Melanie at a road stop and then we just drive across the country taking out rapists and shitty dudes.
Yeah. And again, I know we're not ever going to get a sequel to this movie. No. Unless we get a legacy sequel, please. Jess Weixler, Lichtenstein, please do that. But would watch.
In a heartbeat. Yes.
Truthfully, it's the thing where I kind of hope the musical like kind of breaks out of some barriers and like gets a wider appeal because I would love to see this movie get more like attention. I mean, it did when it came out, I feel like, but it kind of like came and went. You know, it wasn't talked about as much as I thought a movie about a toothy vagina would have been talked about.
It is strange, right? Because it has such a great... Like, it's got such a great idea behind it. You would think that people would still do it. But even when I see people writing about it within the last couple of years, it's framed as that film that you've forgotten.
That's also, too, though, I mean, because critics liked it for the most part, but I'm going back to that Letterboxd score. And also, the Rotten Tomatoes audience score for this movie is 45%.
That is wild. That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. I could think of a multitude of reasons for us, depending on who the person was, as to why they wouldn't like this. You know, maybe someone wanted it to be more exploitative. Maybe someone just thought the mere concept of toothy vagina was just so stupid, so they weren't ever going to like it anyway. I don't know, but this movie deserves some recognition.
Oh, actually, okay, while you were talking, I feel like some people might say, oh, we could probably put this into conversation with something like Promising Young Woman.
Yes,
The other one I was thinking of is the Canadian one that she does cut off his penis. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Violation?
Violation.
Yeah. Oh, God. Maybe watch that one first. Because that's going to be
that's a rough one.
I think out of all these movies, that's the most upsetting movie of the three.
Well, because there's no comedy. Like these other movies were doing, needle drops, comedy beats, and so on. Violation is just, hey, do you want to have a bad fucking day? Yeah. I mean, it's a fantastic movie. It's really, really well done, but it's not an easy watch.
Yeah, I was going to say, Violation is one of my favorite rape revenge films of the past, 10 years, which I realize, even just saying one of my favorite rape revenge films, I get it, but it's that and MFA are kind of my two bars for modern rape revenge films.
Yeah, and of course, revenge is still kicking around. We got to get you revenged again.
Yes, I need to get revenged again, but it's fine. I got toothed.
There we go. Teeth too.
Okay, everyone. Well, that has been Teeth. Before we announce what we're covering next week, just some quick housekeeping. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us on Blue Sky and Instagram at HorrorQueers, or shoot us an email at horrorqueers@gmail.com. Find us on Letterboxd to keep track of all the films we've covered. If you want to chat with other listeners, please join our Facebook Horror Queers group. If you have a moment, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you want even more content, please support the show by becoming a patron at patreon.com/horrorqueers. If you subscribe today, you will get 363 and a half hours of Patreon content, including this month's new episodes on Hannibal Season 2, Episodes 1 and 2, Companion, Hard Eyes, The Monkey, and a brand new audio commentary on Pitch Black for its 25th anniversary.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
Very much so. Also, I didn't realize how many heavy hitters were coming out in February in theaters. Companion, Hard Eyes, The Monkey, Jesus Christ.
I know, yeah.
But, Joe...
What?
Oh my God, what are we talking about next week?
Well, to coincide with the aforementioned The Monkey, which of course is based on a kind of cursed object, we are going to do a tie-in companion with Mr. Anthony Perkins' son's latest film. So we're going to talk about another cursed object movie, only it's going to be trashy and shitty and fun. Trace, we're going to go into my neck of the woods and talk about Amityville 1992. It's about time.
And remember, everyone, this is the one that is literally about time because the possessed object in question is a clock.
It is indeed. Yes.
I'm so happy to watch this with you. And also for you to really show off some of your Amityville knowledge. I expect dissertation levels of Amityville knowledge from you, Joe.
Oh my God. Whatever. Here's the thing. The only thing you really need to know to sell you on this film, folks, is that it is directed by Hellraiser 2 Hellbound's Tony Randall.
Oh, well, also, okay, out of the, I'm going to be, 40 plus Amityville movies you have watched?
Oh, baby. We're into the 60s.
Oh my God. Does this rank in the top 5?
Absolutely, it does.
There you go. All you need to know, everyone.
It's actually a good one. This is a fun movie. We will have a good time with it.
Awesome. Well, until then, we can cross out Teeth.
Indeed. And cross out Horror Queers.